Motilal Oswal, Chairman and Managing Director, Motilal Oswal Financial Services, now joins in on the sidelines of the Motilal Oswal Annual Global Investor Conference. Well, great to have you with us, Mr. Oswal. Thanks very much for taking the time out. Now, you seem to be talking to some of, the biggest voices in India Inc. And what's the sense that you're picking up? Because it seems to be a cautious optimism on the market outlook.
Yeah, when you look at the headlines and when you look at the market, definitely there's a lot of pessimism around. But when we talk to the corporates, when we talk to investors, I think there's some amount of concern, of course, but there is a little bit optimism also. Like really, I think yesterday we had Mr. Deepak Parekh speaking, and I think he talked about a lot of things really where he said that yes, pain may be there in the short term, but I think medium to long term is quite really excited on the economic side what's happening. We had Mr. Murthy, he's talking about what's happening in the Infosys on the global side. We have now Airtel. We'll have Mr. Kumar Bidla. So I think things are not as bad as it appears overall when we talk to a lot of people. I think we also have talked to a lot of investors and they're not so much better, although they are disappointed with the kind of returns they've got from the market. But I think overall, I would say things are better on the ground than they are really made out.
The buy side, as the case may be, Mr. Oswal, how are they reacting to investing money right now? Because on one hand, there's this threat of the QE tapering, taking away funds from emerging markets. Whether that's gone on or remains to be seen. But on the other side, these are very attractive levels if you look at the currency for global investors to invest in, assuming that the rupee doesn't depreciate, of course.
I think you've got various kind of investors. There are some kind of people who are very long or long on long-term kind of, perspective. And there will be few people who will be sitting on the sidelines and try to figure out which are the kind of, stories which really can really make them excited. I think overall, I would say that the sentiment will be a little bit kind of, disappointed, although people are saying that there's some kind of stability is coming in, whether it is on the QE side or whether it is QE tapering side, the things are known, or whether it is on the corporate kind of, profitability, or whether it is on the kind of, rupee movement. So everybody is waiting and watching to see that what's in it for them from the longer term perspective. And I think that the people who are talking to us here from the investors as well as on the corporate side, that there is definitely an India story which is still intact, although they see the hiccups are in the short term. And it's not only India, but I think most of the emerging markets are going through some kind of, corrective mode or consolidation mode, what we can say.
Where are investors most skeptical about, Mr. Oswal? Is there a particular sector of companies that investors are telling you that, hey, we don't even want to look at these companies, so fine, there might be in your conference, but let's not interact with them too much because there are other set of companies which are more attractive. Is there a sector that people are just completely avoiding?
I think that's what is really seen in the market side. I think there are loved sectors and there are hated sectors, and not much is happening even on the hated sectors because people are looking towards the external environment, people are looking towards the government, which is really not really, taking many more decisions. So I think that the dividing line is very clear here, even in terms of the companies and the sectors. And people know where I think they see some excitement, whether it is on the IT companies, whether it is maybe on telecom companies, or maybe on kind of, some FMCG companies. So I think the winners right now are very clear, and winners are winning right now, and the losers, they are really on the sideline for the time being.
What would you say, Mr. Oswal, to the overall backbone of the equity markets, the way some of the blue chip stocks, particularly banking names, have really been tanking? Is the approach to just wait on the sidelines or build a portfolio in some of these names?
I think definitely banking is going through some kind of, stressing time. We heard Chanda Kochar, and she also said that she is concerned, although she would like to handhold the borrowers or the corporate sector. But definitely there are concerns on that side. And you see the kind of, initiatives that were taken by the government as well as by the RBI. So that's putting huge amount of pressure on the whole system in terms of liquidity, in terms of rates and hike in kind of, short-term interest rates. And that kind of, I think, pessimism is there around the whole sector, although most of the brunt is taken by the public sectors. But now the private sector, the banks also are correcting in line with what is kind of, I think, the environment is showing.
Is there a fear of scaling back to levels now of 4,800 or even lower now at the rate of which we're seeing a deceleration?
It's very difficult to predict the kind of, I think, market movements, but it all depends on how the things really play out. Because I think in short term you see the pain, but I think medium term we need to see what's going to happen on the political side. Very few kind of government agencies or the departments which are working, but most of the kind of government kind of ministries are also really not in very active mode. People are just waiting what's going to happen in the kind of, I think, 5 elections, 5 state elections, and then what's happened to the Lok Sabha elections. So I think even on the investors and corporate side, that's a big event really which happens every 5 years, and still it's too early to say what's going to happen on that side. But that's going to be big kind of, I think, I would say, defining moment or the kind of, I think, big trigger for the markets to take some clue on that. Once some clarity happens on that side, I would say market will start taking cognizance of certain kind of, I think, positive aspects which are really not being considered by the market. I think you look at the kind of monsoon, or even look at from the rupee, there are a huge number of companies which are getting benefited, and some refunds are happening, like you saw the petrol and diesel price hike happening. So something is there for, I would say, for the markets, but right now nobody's really in that kind of mood to act upon those good signals.
You've seen multiple cycles, Mr. Oswal, and I believe your gut is probably a stronger indicator than other things. What does your gut tell you right now? Is it a good time and a good level to invest into, or can there be better levels and a better time over the course of the next 6 to 12 months?
I think we're not seeing really too panicky kind of, I think, market conditions, although markets really are not also in really very great mood on that side. But my sense is that there would be some opportunities which the market will keep on giving when the markets panic. You've seen some panic for a few days, but more panic is visible more on the currency side than on the market side. In the sense, markets, I would say, despite all the negativity, are holding out on overall index level, although some of the sectors have been really pulled down very badly. So my thing is that market will keep on giving opportunities, and of course really you can't, it's very difficult to time the market. You can't buy everything at the rock bottom price. So the strategies would be, I think, keep on picking up at least small kind of, I think, small amount of equities at every dip level. The markets are not going to really shoot up immediately, so it will give you some opportunities.
Pockets, Mr. Oswal. I mean, if I read your reports, they speak about IT, they speak about pharma, they speak about a lot of hidden ideas as well. Not really hidden, but mid-sized ideas as well. What are you advising investors to do right now? Which companies or which sector finds dominance in Motilal Oswal research right now?
No, I think what we have talked about, more or less things are coming out of, whether it is IT sector, whether it is FMCG, whether it is even on pharmaceuticals. I think these are the clear winners, and I would say from the contrarian perspective, it will be the banking sector, which can really, I think, give, I would say, that the risk-reward ratio is definitely in their favor of the reward. So people who can take a little bit risk, I think the banking sector, which will give them huge amount of opportunities.
Mr. Oswal, what about some of those beaten down real estate infrastructure names? Do you think that beyond a tactical trade, this sector is unlikely to do anything special, even if we do see an improvement on the policy as well as government front?
I think real estate is a sector, I would say it has to go through some more pain because the kind of, I think, leverage still most of the bigger companies have, and the kind of, I think, environment we see on the ground when you talk to the real estate companies, and especially the high cost of borrowing and the high cost of mortgages. So our sense is that that sector may take a little bit more time than the other sectors to bounce back. So I think one should not be in really too much hurry to pick up the real estate stocks.
Okay. And just wondering, between the two, which one do you prefer more? I know there are individual stories in both IT and pharma, but everybody's talking about these two as being the biggest beneficiaries of the currency theme. Have both of them played out, or one or the other still finds preference in your eyes?
I think my personal view is that at least most of the things on currency side is really, I think, done. So we will not see too much depreciation of the rupee from these levels. And pharma generally, I think, remains not only the beneficiary of the exports kind of things, but I think there's a huge amount of sectors among the Indian, from the foreign investors to look at Indian companies from the acquisition perspective. So pharma, I would say, will be much more exciting than the IT at this point of time.
Is there anything that merits a buy within the metals basket, and what's your overall opinion on that sector given its cyclical nature?
Sorry, which one?
The metals basket.
Metals. Okay. I think, again, it's very cyclical, and looking at the kind of, I think, international movements, it's quite volatile from that perspective. But I would say that some amount of allocation should be done. I think there are a lot of good companies, whether it is Hindalco or maybe even Tisco and all. So I think these sectors cannot be written off, although the market is really, I think, not having any kind of fancy for these kind of stocks right now.
Before we wrap up, just the last couple of questions, Mr. Oswal. One would be where, you know, we got a couple of reports the last few days which are talking about FMCG names trading at very high multiples, and the reports say that these companies could trade at even higher multiples over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. What's the base call on consumption? They are expensive, but are they worth it, or would you avoid them for the time being?
We heard Mr. Adi Godrej talking about the consumption, and he was quite positive overall about the India story on the consumption compared to the China. I think you need to look at the individual stocks and the individual kind of, I think, I would say, overall merit of the case rather than on the whole sector. My personal view is that sector, I would say, is right now overvalued, but again, really we have to look back to the specific companies rather than the whole sector.
Companies that got invited from the consumption space, I don't know if you're at liberty to maybe name one or two, but is there something that you specifically like, Mr. Oswal?
I have not heard many companies on the FMCG except Mr. Godrej. I heard. I think there are a huge number of companies which are having one-to-one meetings with investors. So to talk about few specific companies will be difficult for me.
All right. It's great having you and getting your views, Mr. Oswal. All the best with the remainder of the conference, and thanks so much for being a part of this discussion on ET Now.